Which is the better stock to buy right now, Apple or Nvidia? By the end of this video, you're going to have the answer to that question. I'm going to look at their gross profit margin, operating profit margin. I'm going to look at revenue growth. And finally, I'm going to look at their valuations to determine which one is a better buy. So let's get right into it. What I have pulled up here is Nvidia's and Apple's gross profit margin and operating profit margin on a quarterly basis going back all the way before 2016. And what we could see here is that Nvidia has a clear advantage in terms of gross profit margin in the purple above, 64.9% and against 38% most recently. And then if we look at the historical range, it's way above Apple's gross profit margin, so they have a clear advantage there. But that's a little bit misleading because there can be a lot of expenses that Nvidia is incurring below the cost of goods sold line that's helping it deliver these kinds of excellent gross profit margins. For instance, it could be spending a lot of money on research and development, which is allowing it to develop these innovative technology and selling it at premium prices. So it's a little more informative to look at their operating profit margins and compare those, because that gives a more holistic picture of their profitability. And looking at the operating profit margin going all the way back to 2000 and before 2016, we see that it's been up and down. Earlier in the decade, in 2016 and parts of 2015, Apple was earning a higher operating profit margin, and then Nvidia took over the lead by a small margin for a few years, and then Apple regained the lead, and now Nvidia is ahead. But there isn't a clear advantage for Nvidia in this regard, similar to how there is a clear advantage for Nvidia in the gross profit margin. So still, I would say Nvidia has the advantage here, but not by a large margin, and it's arguable. It's not very clear that they have the advantage in this regard. All right, so let's move on and look at this next chart here, which is a 10-year history of revenue growth for Apple and Nvidia going back all the way before 2014. And this is again quarterly year-over-year revenue growth. And similar to what we saw earlier, it's a bit of a ebb and flow here, where earlier in the decade, Apple in the purple, Nvidia in the orange, Apple experienced better revenue growth in certain points in time, and then Nvidia took over the gap, and then Apple took over slightly right before 2020, and then Nvidia took over. And so again, I would say I would give Nvidia the advantage here, but it's not a clear advantage, and it's not by a large margin. In fact, when in certain cycles, when Apple is releasing a highly desired upgrade to its iPhone, like when it did the upgrade to the larger screen model, when it did the iPhone 6 Plus, that created a surge in revenue growth. And then when it changed over to the 5G model a little while ago, that created a surge in growth. And so now Apple's about to enter into Apple's just announced the release of its newest iPhone, and so we'll see if that creates another boom in revenue growth for Apple. So Apple's prospects look actually pretty good in the near term. It's launching the new iPhone. It's also launching new iterations of its headphones and the Apple Watch. However, Nvidia's prospects in the near term are not very good. Its revenue growth actually could turn negative over the next few quarters, as there is an oversupply of its chips in the marketplace. It's reducing prices to try and get those chips sold. Revenue growth year over year is forecasted to slow down in its upcoming quarter, and the US government is restricting its chip sales to China and Russia. And so several macroeconomic forces are working against Nvidia in the near term that is substantially slowing its revenue growth. And so it might actually turn over to Apple's advantage here over the next few quarters, and maybe perhaps, um, 4 to 8 quarters, Apple might have the advantage here, and there is no guarantee that Nvidia will reclaim that advantage going forward. So, both in terms of the operating profit margin and the revenue growth, I would give Nvidia the slightest advantages over Apple in that regard. And so, uh, um, you know, the two combined, so check mark win for Nvidia so far. So now let's move on to the final step, which is going to compare their valuations. So what I have here is a 5-year historical chart of Apple and Nvidia's price to earnings ratio and the price to free cash flow ratio. And we Apple in the purple here and Nvidia in the orange. And what we have here is Nvidia selling at a consistently higher premium than Apple, both in terms of price to free cash flow and price to earnings. Most recently, it's trading at more than double the price to free cash flow of Apple at 49.6 versus Apple at 21.6, and then a price to earnings of 40 versus Apple's price to earnings of 23. So Nvidia is considerably more expensive than Apple in its valuation. And when I look at this premium valuation compared to Apple, and then I look back at the historical performance in terms of revenue and profit growth, I don't think that Nvidia has earned this kind of premium. I don't think that they deserve to be selling at more than twice the price to free cash flow of Apple and almost 2 times the price to earnings of Apple. Especially when I think about in the near term, Nvidia's prospects are troubled. They're expecting declining revenue growth. They've got way too much inventory on hand, and they're going to need to offer discounts to get rid of that inventory. And so their prospects in the near term are not looking good. Now, admittedly, their long-term prospects are excellent, right? They're the leading semiconductor company in an industry that's growing in, artificial intelligence, driverless cars, computer servers, gaming, all of these cutting edge industries. Nvidia is a crucial component in their products, and so it's got excellent long-term prospects. But still, I those prospects are in my opinion, they don't justify this type of premium valuation over Apple. So, to answer the question posed in the headline, which stock is a better buy right now, just right now, Apple stock, in my opinion, is a better buy right now. However, that might change over the next quarter or over the next 2 quarters. So please subscribe to the channel. There will be updates. I follow these two companies closely and I make updates on them. So this might change. So if you're interested in knowing about that, make sure to subscribe. But that's all I've got for Apple and Nvidia right now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. I want to thank the Motley Fool for sponsoring this video. The Motley Fool is a company that provides investing insight and stock recommendations for all investors of all skill sets and risk levels. So I'm proud to partner with the Motley Fool to bring you 10 stock picks from their popular product, Stock Advisor. Stock Advisor has beaten the market by more than 3 times. Go to fool.com/Parkev to get your 10 stock picks now.